Okay, we are live. So we want to welcome everyone to our Native Wellness Power Hour. Today actually is our 280th Native Wellness Power Hour. So I can't believe that we're in week 50. This is the Native Wellness Institute's response to the pandemic by offering daily uplifting programming and messaging to help people along your healing and wellness journeys. My name is Jillene Joseph, and I come from the Aani people of Fort Belknap, Montana. I'm also the executive director of the Native Wellness Institute. We are a national nonprofit. The IRS calls us a nonprofit. We like to say that we're a social profit because the work that we do is benefiting our communities and our people. I'm super happy to have two of my friends and colleagues here. We're doing some follow up on living with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, FASD. So, way back when, we used to call it FAS, FAE, and as we've continued to learn more, now we call it FASD, fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. So, Marie, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and welcome back?
Good morning or good afternoon. My name is Marie Knight. I was born and raised in Warm Springs, Oregon, and I've been living in Portland, Oregon since 2005. And I self-identified as being affected by FASD 8 years ago when I joined the Native Wellness Institute, Future Generations Collaborative. And I've been just learning about it ever since.
Nice. Thank you, Marie. Susie, do you want to introduce yourself?
And I am Suzie Kuerschner, and following the lead on Born and Raised. I'm born and raised on the very mountain that I still live on, the mountain. And I am grateful to be here, and I am grateful for the opportunity. I am Suzie. Hello?
Oh, go ahead. That was me. Sorry.
That's all right. That's fine. Anyway, I'm grateful for the opportunity always to look at anything that might be a challenge in our lives and sort of fleece out the opportunity of it, the gift of it. And so in our earlier discussions, we kind of looked through the lens of what is the gift that comes out of understanding that fetal alcohol spectrum disorder is a consequence of the traumas that we have been through. And now we have the opportunity and the gift to, from a strength-based perspective, understand what fetal alcohol can bring to us. And today we have a really great privilege of having Marie speaking to it from absolutely those core strengths that are her beauties, that are her gift, not only to herself, but most importantly, gift to her community and therefore to the generations. So I am really pleased and thankful to be a part of today's journey with you, Marie.
Awesome. Thank you, Susie. So, Marie, Susie, and myself, and many other colleagues, we work on a local project here. The Native Wellness Institute is involved in, as well as many other organizations. And it's called the Future Generations Collaborative. We call it the FGC for short. And we exist because we're trying to reduce substance affected pregnancies in the local Native community here. We exist to also provide services to community members who are living on the spectrum. We provide opportunities for healing and all kinds of things. And so, we talk a lot and you hear a lot about being trauma informed and all of this. And Susie always helps us to really look at environmental trauma and neurotrauma, right? And how we can look at FASD as a neurotrauma because it impacts our brains, right? And it's something, a trauma that we'll have for our entire lives. And so Marie, actually, this is her birthday week. So happy birthday, Marie. And as a part of her birthday celebration, she wanted to do daily offerings to provide teachings and inspiration. And so today was her idea. For her birthday, she wanted to come on here as a person who identifies as living on the FASD spectrum, to really talk about what can parents and others do to help children who might be on the spectrum as well, right? So that's what today's topic is about, is fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. So there's a couple of people saying happy birthday already. There's people identifying on here as well already. So hopefully people will resonate with today, and we encourage you to share it with on your social media so other people can tune in. What we have found is that once people learn about FASD, some people, start to have all these light bulbs, right? Kind of go off like, oh, I can identify with that behavior. Oh, wow. Like, I wonder if my mom drank with me, because oftentimes we don't know, right? But then we start hearing about the behaviors and we're like, oh, that's my behavior. So today is all about like recognizing the behaviors and then some solutions, right? Some solutions to help us move forward. So Marie, you talked about impulsive behavior with children. You want to talk a little bit about that and what you feel are some solutions around that?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that really are highly misunderstood, is the impulsive behavior of children that are affected by fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, because a lot of times parents or caregivers will assume that the child is merely being defiant. And really, that's not it. It's a curiosity that can't be dissuaded by, harsh discipline in any way. Because, like, one of the things that I used to do a lot was play with fire. And because playing with fire is dangerous, I got into a lot of trouble. But um, that was just one of the habits. There was also the habit of climbing stuff and also hiding in small spaces, because I used to find little corners and spaces or closets and things where I could hide just to kind of isolate myself. And then there's also the fact that if somebody did try to punish me or discipline me, it didn't exactly discourage the behavior. It just made me, be more sneaky about it, because my curiosity couldn't be, you know, my curiosity didn't go away because I was told not to do something. So a lot of this behavior had to be redirected and had to be accommodated because I couldn't be stopped. And one of the things that I wanted to emphasize today was that your child is not being defiant. They're just curious. They're trying to learn, and they're going to learn one way or another. And so the best way for parents to try to maybe curb, like change the behaviors, to redirect it into um a healthier, safer situation, rather than getting upset about the situation. Like with my obsession with fire, my grandmother recognized that I wasn't going to stop, so she started teaching me about fire, about building fires, about cooking over fires, about, ways it's used in ways that it, just all the sacredness about it. And so instead of trying to discourage me from, playing with fire, she kind of pushed me in a direction where I was able to continue learning about this very dangerous element without endangering anyone around me. And the same thing with climbing. My grandfather would get upset because he was always worried that I was going to hurt myself climbing on stuff. But I I just found other places to climb rather than, discontinuing the behavior. But it can be very frustrating um, for adults to understand that your child needs, to be redirected, not disciplined.
Mm, excellent. I love that. And I love even the language, right? Impulsive behavior as an example, right? Or redirecting. You know, I think those are really important words to like think about, right? And to help us remember how to do that. So Susie,
Mhm.
how about, do you have something to add to that?
Well, not a lot, because she, as usual, Marie frames it very well and very concretely. But I think the takeaway for me always is when we think of things like impulsivity, or any behavior, is that for all children and for all people, we want to understand that behavior is communication. And I think I mentioned before, so often, just exactly what Marie described in terms of somebody's acting out. And so we will read it that they don't want to comply. They aren't following through. We aren't doing what we want. And what we don't real understand, often don't understand, is that the behavior that we're seeing is a communication of a need or a want. So when you say, Marie, you identify so well that you had a curiosity, your behavior was communicating that curiosity. And so to address, it's not what children won't do, it's what they can't do. And if I have an FASD, it's about the can't. I really do want to comply. I want, well, you show me what you want and I will do that, because if I have an FASD, I really do want you to like me. I didn't stay awake all night last night figuring out how to irritate you. But as I often use the example of one child and mother, my mom didn't turn my socks so that I didn't feel the seams. And that's making me dance around the classroom because I can't stand to hold my feet still. So that's that understanding of behavior. And then some of the tools that I think you'll probably talk about way better than I and Marie are those things that we put in our basket. You know, I think of not only Marie, but of us as a people, and we hold things, in baskets that are woven of strong reeds. And that's that integration, that weaving together that creates that support for us. So in my basket, if I have an FASD, is I want you to understand why I have that behavior, but I want you to help me by mapping the positive. What am I doing right? So when I'm climbing on that building, can you say to me, no, let's not say, don't climb, get off that building, you know? How many times have I told you? Well, when you do that, my whole sensory system is just going, oh my gosh, and my brain is yelling, I've done something wrong, I don't know what, and I'm in trouble. But if instead you come to me and you say, wow, Marie, look at you climbing. You really like to climb, don't you? Let's go find a good tree to climb. Or let's, if we happen to be around a playground. In other words, let's shift, let's redirect to that positive. And provide that structure around that, because at the end of the day, I will take my cues from my environment, and I will reflect that environment and that positivity that you give me.
Yeah, and with the tree climbing, my grandmother recognized that I wasn't going to stop climbing, so she started to use that as a tool where she would start to send me up trees to harvest food or to get things that were too high, and she just didn't feel like getting the ladder out, so she'd send me to go climb. But she likes to climb, I'm just going to make her do it. And I didn't mind. I really didn't. And the other thing I wanted to point out too is the need for a quiet space, because like I mentioned earlier, how I oftentimes, climbed into, hidden closets and, looked for places to hide. It's because I wanted a retreat. The house where I grew up in was a 4-bedroom house. My grandparents both had 2 separate bedrooms, so that left 2 bedrooms for me and 5 other siblings to share. That was not really any place that I could call like my own space. And so even if you're an adult, children and adults can both benefit from having one space in their house where the lighting is low, where the sound is kind of muted, and there's just simple things like it's not too cluttered, it's not too bright or chaotic, just a nice quiet place where they can go and sit and just kind of gather their thoughts. Because one of the things that happens a lot internally is that I get a lot of thoughts that just whirl around and don't stop. And it drives me crazy because it also happens while I'm talking or while I'm doing something. And a lot of times it's a very distracting to where I'm trying to stay focused, but my brain keeps firing off and I can't, keep my focus clear. And in a lot of ways, that also left me susceptible to addiction and, coping mechanisms that weren't healthy for me. And the reason I pointed that out is because, this is important for areas where there's a lot of alcoholism or drug addiction where, people are affected and they don't recognize that. But these drugs and alcohol, they affect the brain in a way where you either feel like you can finally keep up with everyone or it calms you down so you can focus, which is not healthy because then you become addicted. And then the addiction turns into more impulsive behavior. And that's why, in a sense, we do need those quiet places. We do need a place where we can gather ourselves because we are so susceptible to other coping mechanisms that are not good.
Yeah. Awesome. Excellent. Thank you, Marie. It reminds me, Susie is a big um, advocate for like the sensory piece, right? And having the sheepskins. I have one right behind me actually in my office, and I put it on my feet with bare feet, like for my own self-regulation to make me feel good. And one time we were doing these women's groups, and we just had these sheepskins like around on the couches and chairs, and it was just so awesome just to watch the women come in there and just nestle up on these sheepskin rugs. And so that's awesome for self-regulation. So in the comments, there's some questions coming in already. So one of them is, should children, well, they talked about diagnosis, right? Suzie, can you talk a little bit about the diagnosis piece? And then another question that came in was around, should children go on medication because of FA?
Okay. Yeah. And those are a very related question. I still want to tag on. Thank you for uplifting the sheepskin addiction that I have. And we always, one of the great privileges of working with the FGC is that we've had budgets, to help you create those retreat spaces. And as Jillene says, we all benefit from de-stressors and being able to calm and self-regulate. So I appreciate what both of you really identified in terms of that, because that's probably one of the most important strategies to offer up those who may be impacted. In terms of diagnosis, what I think is really important is that we understand that there is no utility, there is no use of diagnosis unless we see it as a part of continuum of care. It exists within that continuum of understanding and creating understanding. It never exists for a label, and it must always be done in a manner, in a way in which we don't re-traumatize and create stigma or shame for any of the generations. And which is why we spent so much time the first one of these sessions, really looking at where does it come from? Why is it among us? And Marie just touched on it really nicely in terms of how addictions are a part of our self-medication to calm down. But so I think that's the most important thing to learn about diagnosis. And then when we move from that, we understand that we are doing it to create that understanding that is individualized to the person. So even with a diagnosis, FASD is not a medical diagnosis. It is an umbrella term, of which FAS is one, prenatal exposure. There's a whole alphabet soup that comes under that umbrella. But if I seek to have a diagnosis, what I want to do is I want someone to hook me up into a diagnostic process that prepares me for it, prepares me, my parents, those that care about me and understand who I am in terms of my strengths, not just my challenges. And so I want to go to a center, a diagnostic team that has the whole multidisciplinary team, not just one person, not just a psych eval, but somebody who's going to look at me in terms of my sensory stuff. And so that's going to be somebody with that's an OT or an occupational therapist, a physical therapist. So how my body moves in space, how it understands it, what my speech and language is. So often when I have an FASD, I just echo the language that I hear. And so people think I'm really verbal and that I really understand. But in fact, my expressive language is the fancy term for it, is good, but my receptive is really impacted by that prenatal exposure. So that means I can't take in the information and store it and retrieve it or process it. So I want somebody on that team that's going to really look at that, because a whole lot of my behavior and a whole lot of my emotions are going to come from that. I want somebody who's going to look from the psychological perspective of emotional development and realize that that prenatal exposure impacted the development of my midbrain and all the fancy terms around that, but that basically say my right and left brain have a hard time talking to each other. Show me how to do things, help me connect, and give me those strategies that will calm me so that I can process and not have emotional escalation. I want the physical doctor who's going to understand whether I'm a child and I need a pediatrician or a primary care is going to understand maybe I have some a real predisposition for diabetes, and that coupled with an FASD really has a lot to do with my emotional self-regulation. And so it's my diet is going to be incredibly important. And Marie's going to talk a little bit later about the traditional foods that we are blessed with that really give that choline, those substances that help. So I want that physical doctor. I want an educational side who's going to help me know how I learn, because just because I'm under that umbrella doesn't mean we all learn the same way. So I want that diagnosis to show me what I can do well and what I can't. Maybe that diagnosis is going to help me understand that I am a poet, I am a musician, I am an artist, because that right brain of mine is going to be much more intact than that analytic left brain. So that's the kind of diagnosis. But to get ready for that, I want somebody to spend time with me and my family to invite that diagnosis so that I'm not going to have shame or stigma. And then I want someone to look at that diagnosis and help me connect with those resources that are within my community, those assets that are, yes, regular programming and educators, and as I say, all of these professionals that might help me with those sensory things. But I also want to be connected to the very strength of who I am within my identity and my culture, because I am never my disability. I am never a label. I am my own person with my own beauties, that if you help me with a good diagnosis, you will lead me to those beauties. And that will lead me to, whether we want to call it an IFSP or an IEP or all those special ed things that can help. Those are positive tools. Again, they don't carry stigma. So what we call it is a 4-digit international code that has thousands of permutations. So you do not walk out of a diagnosis that looks like anybody else's, because a real full holistic diagnosis is going to tell me about all my strengths and challenges and how they show themselves just within who I am. And that was the second part of that question.
Yeah, it was the medication. So
okay, so related to, thank you so much. Part of what I will learn in an FASD diagnosis is that I may have an ADHD, I may have issues like that, but I may not too. Just like I may, down the road, the DSM-5 is going to tell me, that diagnostic model is going to say, you have anxiety disorder. Well, guess what? That's a symptom. Oppositional defiant disorder, those are symptoms of an FASD. And so please be very careful to pay attention to diagnosis, because that really informs whether I will benefit. Because for many of our children, it's really contraindicated. If I have renal and kidney impacts from prenatal exposure to alcohol, guess what? Please do not give me most any of the derivatives that deal with hyperactive uh, syndromes, or ADHD, or all the various, again, alphabet soup that we've been, because you actually might be further destroying my kidneys and my renal system. Same thing with my heart. There are a number of medications that are really contraindicated for our popular, folks that are impacted with an FASD, and just as effective over time. In some cases, sometimes it is useful as a short tool for someone to habituate, we call it, build a behavior and build that habit. But most often, way more than those medications, I'd like you to have a sheepskin. I'd like you to have a little nook, a little corner that you can retreat to. And I'm going to trust you by building within you those skills that are going to calm you and that focus. And I'm going to help you with your memory and your storage and your retrieval, because if I do those things, then we will script and build those habits that you won't need that medication, and use the ways of your spirit. Because our children who have had the blessing of being a part of ceremony and come and are impacted with an FASD, they show themselves to be some of the most spiritually attuned and calmed, whether it's the drum, whether it's the practice, it's the ritual itself. It is the structure that will be my lifeline.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Suzie. So there's comments coming in about other things that to help children or help adults as well. So people are commenting, and they're commenting about, nutrition and exercise. And I know, Marie, you wanted to talk about that. So it's kind of a good segue to talk about, traditional foods and those kinds of things. So you want to share a little bit about that, Marie?
Yes, one of the things I want people to really consider, especially when you're trying to deal with your FASD child, understand that you can't fix your child. You can only help them heal. And as far as medication goes, I do not encourage any form of medication, because I know from my personal experience, it's never worked out. What does help is holistic activities that work with both hands, or that get the body moving in left and right motions, because those things are creating connections between your brain. Like people that know me know that I'm a basket weaver, and the activity of weaving baskets was able to get both my hands working together, and in a sense that is a therapeutic activity. And the same thing with traditional foods. Part of why I am as healthy as I am is because of my family's traditional foods, because in the Pacific Northwest, we mentioned choline, that is found in all of our traditional foods. Hold on one second. Julio, can you go in the other room, please? Thank you. I wasn't sure if anyone could hear over him, but one of the things that I know is that I used to spin around a lot, and that helped. I know laying in a hammock really helps. If your child likes to draw or likes to do crafting or beading, those things can help. In a lot of ways, every child has natural curiosities. And when we encourage those curiosities and help them to learn more about those things, that in a sense is a healing activity. So when you think about trying to help your child, think about ways to help them heal, not ways to fix them. Because when you are giving children medication, in a sense, it's like trying to fix your child. And I can say from my personal experience, whenever people talk about trying to fix me, I interpreted that as something's wrong with me. And that stuck with me in a lot of ways that was very, very damaging to my self-esteem. And so if your child has a natural curiosity, I would encourage more learning around that. And as far as diagnosis goes, the problem that I have with medical diagnosis is that it can look like a lot of different things. It can look like depression or anxiety or ADHD or bipolar or even schizophrenia. And in a lot of ways, if you have a dual diagnosis, there is a good chance you are affected by alcohol. And with traditional foods, my family ate a lot of traditional foods, but it wasn't just the food, it was also the relationship we had with the food. Because being a traditional food gatherer, we had to go out to fields to find the foods. We dug them out of the ground and we processed them and dried them and cooked them. So we were involved with the full process of the food. And at the very end, we benefited from the choline in our foods by accident, really. And if you don't have traditional foods, even just gardening with your children, growing food, growing plants, even that can be a very good therapy for kids to help redirect their behavior and to find a healthy way for them to, self-regulate. And also routine. Routine is one of the best tools that children can have, because if children know what to expect throughout their day, throughout their week, and throughout their month, or even their year, they have more security and they feel more stable and less in, I guess, less insecure, because that's one of the things that was, I think, was difficult for me, was that my family traveled a lot when we were younger. And so I didn't really know whether or not we were staying home on the weekend or whether we were traveling. But I think it did help that we had, and we didn't move around a lot. And so traveling normally might be stressful for someone like me, but in a sense, having the same home to go back to every time was that security that helped make the travel a little easier. Um, I can't remember what one of the questions was, Jillene, about other coping mechanisms.
Yeah, I think you're hitting it right on the head. So people
You are.
are
You are.
it's awesome. And I hope for
Write down the checklist.
yes, everybody that's tuning in, so she talked about the nutrition piece, the traditional foods in particular, and not just eating the foods, but having a relationship with the foods, right? Like, I think that's so beautiful. So another question came in, asking to speak about intergenerational FASD, that they're witnessing adults living on the spectrum who then become who become parents of children born on the spectrum as well. So,
Right.
Suzie, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I think it's a really important question, and I really appreciate the person bringing that up, because there's a whole scope to look at in terms of that, and it is intergenerational. I mean, again, if we understand the historic trauma that produced the self-medication that has produced the outcome of fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, we understand that, I mean, if we just looked at residential school or boarding school, and for any of us, imagine what that loss was for our children to be taken away, then we used. And those children endured trauma, and then they used. And so there is an intergenerational presence of prenatal exposure, FASD, that is woven into the very fact of our lives, and the trauma that has informed our lives. And that's why it's so important to look at it from a non-stigmatic, get rid of the shame of it, but create an understanding. And the beautiful generations of children who have grown up knowing that they're impacted, but also understand why that is. And that even in places, I can tell many, many stories of where children were removed and they're back with their biologic families, and they were removed because of the addictions and the usage. But then the knowledge of FASD and that understanding has created that reunification, even sometimes for adulthood. This is part of returning people to their communities when they've been fostered. A lot in Canada, we've done that where they were fostered way away, and then we do welcoming back into the community as a part of this understanding. Then there is also the other way in which it shows up intergenerationally, which is that we realize that though it diminishes with every generation, epigenetics has taught us that yes, there are some impacts from one generation to another. And so where we might have clinicians might have looked and said, oh my goodness, this child is acting like they have fetal alcohol. The diagnosis or our observations even, are suggesting that, but mom swears that she did not use, and even dad, and so we had to look at, yes, that's what epigenetics have taught us, and that we know that it is present. And when I was in the course of learning this over decades now, one of the things that I'm constantly reminded, whether it's that we were learning about the midbrain and the right brain not talking to the left brain and going, oh my goodness, our grandmas knew that. They put us in hammocks. Our grandmas knew we were lost in space and we needed to be settled in a cradle board. Well, once again, when we started talking about epigenetics, it was like, well, our grandmas, our ancestors told us about these things, and how many generations. It's 7 and I was in the midst of a conference and actually presenting and probably fell all over everything myself and what I was hit with, that's what we mean by the generations, the 7 generations, because we had just heard a geneticist talk about that takes 7 generations for these implications to be, really phased out. And I thought, well, this is what we learned and this is what we knew. And so it is a generational journey, but like all journeys, it has those gifts that are coming from the understanding of each generation. And what we are woven with is we can talk about the need for structure, for predictability, for self-regulation, for how to address impulsivity, how to redirect, how to map the positive. Within all that whole checklist that Marie's doing such a wonderful job with are the teachings and the understandings of our ancestors. Mm-hmm. And that very relationship that both you and Marie talk about, whether it's with the food, or it's with each other, it's with our ceremonies, it's with the plants and with the animals. Often I do feel that the people who have come among us who are impacted by fetal alcohol, that great gift is the teaching that they are giving us to take us back to our traditions and to our ancestral knowledge, and that we are being retaught to do it with compassion and with understanding, and looking always, as I always say, and I'm sure you get sick of me saying, Jillene, but it is that opportunity to hold up that mirror to show you your beauty. And so FASD, yes, we want to create these structures, this predictability, this sense of safety, this growing of our brain and right and left, and all of those patterns. And it's good for us to take from the tools and the strategies that we are learning for FASD now. It is also really important, I think, and a blessing to be reminded of those ancient tools and to bring them forward with compassion.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you. I was just writing, just even keywords. I keep talking about the language that we can use, right? Having structure, the self-regulation, predictability, frequency and duration, consistency, look and hold up beauty, safety, growing the left and right sides of our brains, map the positive, right? Like all these things that I've learned from both of you, you know, and that I tried to share with others. And I think the beauty in all of that is this helps all children, right? Not just somebody that's on the FASD. This helps all of us, right? And I always, and I know I gave this example before, but I remember that youth gathering we had, and a young boy came in, and we had this craft table set up, and he took this great big piece of felt. It was like a big blanket, and he went and sat in the corner and put that felt over his head. You know, we were in this big gym with these bright lights, just all this, you know, people, and it was chaotic for him, right? And he was trying to self-regulate. Like I saw that clearly. He was trying to self-regulate, right? And he was trying to like create his own little safety nook in the corner. And what the chaperone was trying to do was to jerk that off and force him to come sit in a circle, right? And so I ran over there. I was like, no, 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 like he's fine. Like let him be, you know, he's self-regulating right now. And the chaperone really struggled with that because their job was to make these kids participate, you know? And I'm like, this is how he's doing the best that he can right now. Like he's trying to make himself feel okay, like let him be, you know? So, you know, when we can put our FASD lens on, we always say, right? When we can put that lens on, we can see the world, you know, in a different way, right? And when we see the world in a different way, then we can respond in a different way to help people be successful. So, so there's some other questions coming in. Some people are in serious need of help for their children. What are some recommendations for resources? So for the people tuning in today that would like to learn more about FASD, that would like to learn about resources that they can use, would either of you like to share?
I would like Marie to share some really concrete ones, but I also would like to share that is part of what we do from the education mode of the FGC. And so that is, it would be my honor and my privilege to meet with any families, parents, and, you know, tailor responses and successful strategies that fit with you and your strengths as a family. And also always from the multi-generational, because so many of us, it's what's really helpful I find is that we work with both parents and grandparents, so that we're surrounding the child with that consistent story. And then the other thing is, and I think we talked about this before, is, and you might have put it online just for as kind of a beginning, is that Life is Sacred booklet. And it really looks at FASD, not in terms of what's wrong with me, but what can be right with me. What are the very things that I think I'm understanding the question to be, is what to do. And it looks at it from preconceptual. If I have an FASD and I'm having a hard time and I'm in trauma, not using, so how do I prepare for that birth? And then through infancy, what can we do with hammocks, cradle boards? What can we do with toddlers, preschoolers? And so it looks at every developmental stage all the way through elderhood, because we have elders who are impacted, and there are ways in which we can support them. And for some people, I have worked with some who it wasn't until they were elders that they really understood who they were and why they felt pushed away. And once they began to have an understanding of their impact, it made their life different. So there's no point to ever give up. There's lots of help, and I would be absolutely honored and privileged. Jillene, you can put my contact information in there. And then, as I say, to share that booklet, Life is Sacred. There's another one that we did through NICWA called Beyond the Gloom and Doom. And then another book that we did, Weaving a Resilient Basket of Hope. So those are some specific resource materials. But as I say, I would really invite that privilege to get to support you.
Nice. So I'm going to put Susie's email, SuzieKuerschner@gmail.com. So I'm going to put that in.
You can put my phone number in too. That's okay. In my landline, so that there's a chance of it really working.
Okay. Excellent. Excellent. So
some tips I can offer,
yep.
depending on depending on the age of the child, because it's hard to know what age or how many kids we're talking about, but few things I would recommend. Find a source of comfort for your child. That could be anything from like a stuffed animal to like maybe a sweater they like, or like a blanket, or something that they can hold and have to physically get comfort from. Maybe look at their environment where they spend a lot of their time, and if there's any like really bright colors or bright lights. If it's too cluttered, maybe declutter things, change the coloring of the area to more natural colors, like greens and browns, and just really light, calming colors. If you declutter, try to focus on decluttering any toys that are plastic, that are flashy, or that are loud. But those all cause stress in children that might be on the spectrum. And like if you have children, like a lot of children, and they have to share space, make a corner somewhere where they can go to retreat, just to kind of have. And also, don't push a child to join if they are clearly uncomfortable. That was something that always led to very socially awkward moments where I would feel embarrassed because I was forced to participate when I didn't want to, because I knew I was going to be embarrassed. So definitely allow kids to separate themselves from a group without feeling the need to talk to them or pull them back in. Because a lot of times a child doesn't even want to talk. They just want to sit and be quiet and be left alone. And so just give them time to breathe, give them time to diffuse. And if you have a child that's actually throwing a fit or is upset and very angry, best thing to do is not respond with more to calm, just give them space, give them some time to let a lot of that frustration out, because at that point they're not really going to hear much. You just got to let them burn it out and just try to keep them safe in the process, at least make sure they're not hurting themselves. But those are just some things that help me.
Nice.
And also check the temperature in the room, because if the room is too hot or too cold, oh, I think we lost Jillene, but yeah, those are some of the tips that I can offer, because I know that I like to be comfortable. And that's the main thing. If your child is acting out, they might be uncomfortable, and it could just be like, a thread in their shirt that's, making them itch, or, something their seat's uncomfortable. Like, I don't know if anyone's noticed me fidgeting around, but I get easily distracted. Like I had a fly, flying in front of my face earlier. And so if they appear to be distracted, just understand they're not being defiant. They're just they're just easily distracted. They're still listening. They're just their mind's in multiple places. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
want to empathize.
Thank you, Marie. That was all good. Um, Very good. So it reminds me of in some of the work that we're doing with families, and how some families, like when they start learning about fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, and they resonate and they're identifying on the spectrum, and how they just talk about that was just a normal part of our family life, was my parents drank, right? Like they drank every day, but they still went to work every day, and they drank more on the weekends, but they still made it to work. And I think part of the beauty of talking about FASD is like taking away the shame of it, right? Like Susie, you talked about it. Like, when women drink when they're pregnant, they don't know about FASD, right? And they're drinking for a reason. Oftentimes, hiding that pain or dealing with that pain, right? And then those norms go on. And so that's why, we do the work that we do in terms of trying to provide opportunities for to heal, right? So what would each of you say to that about the healing piece, so that we can stop that cycle from going on? So who wants to go first? Susie, I think Marie just froze. Do you want to take a stab at
Oh,
that?
I was gonna say, but I want Marie because she can really speak to it. Is she available or not?
I think I froze.
Oh,
Can you hear me?
yeah, your voice is back.
Yes.
Go ahead, Marie.
Okay. Um, as far as changing environment, it can be very uncomfortable to change an environment, but just know that when you are changing things, the impulse is to go back to what you know, especially if you come across a lot of pushback, because when people are used to doing things a certain way, you get a lot of pushback when someone in the family wants to change that and do something else. And so in a lot of ways, I encourage people to look for other support systems, look for like-minded people, really try to step out of your comfort zone. And if you are affected like me, that is going to be difficult. But I to give things a chance, try to move away from things gradually, but not necessarily do like a full like ripping the band-aid off change. Just try to like move a little further away, you know, slowly if you have to, but just continue to work towards a better goal and start recognizing what tools don't work for you anymore. Because there's a lot of tools that we develop while living in trauma that don't serve us in a life where things are not so traumatic. Like I had the bad habit of saving too much stuff for just because I wasn't sure if I would get it too much. And then I ended up hoarding a lot of stuff that I didn't need. And so I had to start gradually taking things out and just getting rid of things one little bit at a time and just continuously working towards like lessening how much stuff I had. And so whenever you are working on changing your environment, just make just know that you are going to have to be consistently working on it and just kind of peeling back layer by layer a little bit at a time.
Excellent, Marie.
All that I would tag on to that is sort of the guiding light to me that builds on change is help me move forward. Again, map the positive. Tell me what you see that is my strength so I can do more of that. Because the more I do that strength, that beauty, that's how I heal. Please don't spend time telling me what I've done wrong, whether I'm a child or I'm an adult. Please don't spend time telling me about my failure. And especially if I have an FASD, when you do that, what you log in my brain, that memory that gets stored and encoded is the failure. So please show me what I'm doing right. Please help me move forward. Help me follow that light moving forward. That is that beauty that is me.
Beautiful. Thank you, Susie. I think that reminds me of what I've learned from you as well, from both of you, is we become our environments, right? So someone living on the spectrum, if they're going to hang out with friends who are skipping school or drinking or doing things that they shouldn't be doing, that's what they're going to become, right? And if they're hanging out with young people who maybe are digging roots or fishing or involved in culture, that's who they're going to become, right?
Exactly.
So that's another thing about focusing on the positive. And there was a question in there about well, what if we're not engaged with our culture? And I think that's fine too, because we're all over the place in terms of how we
Right.
identify and how we engage with our culture. But I think Susie and Marie, you both said it right about focusing on the positive, right? Whatever those activities are, like
What do
focus.
you like? What is your strength based? You know, I mean, the first thing to help anyone with anything is what are my assets? What are my strengths? And they, some of them are maybe my talents. Some of them are my likes. Some of them is the very environment. My culture may not be what we're thinking in terms of ceremony, but it may be for me, my culture's, I've got the woods outside me and a creek running by. Not everybody has that, but maybe I have you know, plants. I mean, Marie is like, we could spend hours having her visit her babies that she's birthed and nurtured in her apartment. And that is her environment. And so when you say I am in my environment, you know, the fancy term that we came up with that is behavioral echolalia. And just think about that is echo that which is beautiful around you. And that will be and is your culture. Your culture is are the good things that you've been shown that make you feel good, and be that. And as Jillene, that is beautiful reminder of who am I around. So if I get to be a helper in someone's life, part of mapping that positive is helping them find comfort and inspiration in the people and activities they can be around. Maybe they're going to be a runner. Maybe that's going to be my culture. That's going to really help me. There are folks that are a part of our parent support circle that really show us that positive addiction of running. So
Nice, nice. Well, we're already at the hour. I knew it feels like we just started and now we're already over. So we just want to again thank you all for tuning in. We want to wish Marie a happy birthday. This was Marie's idea and what she wanted to give this gift to all of you, right, for her birthday. So happy birthday, Marie. Thank you. Thank you, Susie, as always, for your wisdom and your stories and your examples. If anyone's interested, we did a couple more that can be found on the Native Wellness Institute's Facebook page that talks more about FASD and the different aspects of it. Where I'm sure we're going to be back on here again to do a part 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 down the road to help people. I put Susie's information in the chat, her email and her phone number. She's happy to help families, you know, help to make our children and our adults that are living on the spectrum to be more successful. So feel welcome to contact her. If you want to email info@nativewellness.com, and I got the email, BJ, I'll email you the PowerPoint that Susie put together on the Life is Sacred book. So we want to thank you all for tuning in. Today, again, is our 280th Power Hour. We have a couple more this week, and then we start all over again next week on week 51. So thank you everyone for tuning in. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
thank you, Marie, for your birthday inspiration.
Yes, thank you. And also, if anyone is having a birthday today or within this week, I have a gift for you. So please contact me via email. Jillene, can you share the email real quick?
Yes, I'll put whoops.
And this is imitation turquoise. It is not real.
You're so honest, but it is so beautiful.
Okay, so
There's the
This is a gift I
weaving,
want to give.
what is your email again? Weaving Wonder,
Weaving3wonders@gmail.com.
Weaving 3 Wonders. Weaving3wonders@gmail.com. So if it's your birthday week this week as well, Marie
Yes.
has a beautiful gift for you. Awesome. Okay, thanks everyone. We'll see you soon.
thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Make good choices.